Okay, I believe we're recording now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Admissions Redesign Network. This is our second meeting that is a part of our Lumina-funded project to bring together our university partners, our Kentucky Department of Education, the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and the Kentucky Community and Technical College System to really explore opportunities to strengthen our admissions experience for our high school seniors all the way into their college going experiences and beyond. So I'm really excited for our agenda today. And I'm especially excited that our friend Cassie Benedict from Kia is going to actually start us off with her sweet baby and kind of just open up our conversation with some updates on FAFSA and how things are going, and just give us a little bit of a lay of the land from her perspective. And then, of course, we have about 30 minutes dedicated to this part of our conversation because I know it is always top of mind of our enrollment management friends, and just want to be really cognizant of how that is impacting our conversations and our just process as we move forward. And then after that part of our meeting, we'll move into really the focus of our conversation today, which is listening to or hearing from Dr. Chris Ledford and Adam Blevins, who are on the CPE data and analytics team, as they share out the two big data questions that we had for them, which was around the impact of dual credit on college going, first year success, retention, completion, as well as college preparedness, kind of by those academic measures, and how those factors impact college going, as well as academic success and retention and completion. So really excited for our data deep dives and discussion today. And then following that, our partner Errol Wint is going to give us a nice recap of the artificial intelligence webinar series that he coordinated this last month, which was absolutely phenomenal. And so he's going to give a high-level overview of that, but those the 4 one-hour webinar sessions are all available and recorded and able to be watched and viewed at your convenience, as well as shared with others. So that information is going to live on and hopefully be available to us as we continue to, figure out how that may be a helpful part of our process. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Cassie, and I'm excited to hear some updates here. Thanks, Cassie.
Lily, thank you so much. Do I have the opportunity to share my screen? Let's see. Let me test it. Oh, yeah, I'm able to. I came up with a quick little presentation for you guys, but really help me watch my time because I don't want to go over. Nope. Let's see. Sorry. Okay. Does everyone see that okay? All right. Okay, so I am Cassie Benedict. I am Director of Outreach Services with Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. And just this is my disclaimer, if anyone has ever been on a virtual meeting with me and I'm not in my Frankfurt office, there are children who peek in on us. And so very real reality happening here that may happen again. Kia is 13 outreach counselors who live and work in their communities. We have 32 AmeriCorps Kentucky College coaches who are housed in high schools across Kentucky. We have the mobile classroom, which is the College Info Roadshow. We give free presentations, hands-on assistance, exhibits, hands-on FAFSA assistance, verification support, free publications, and ever-growing, robust social media events. So I feel like everyone probably knows what Kia is, but just in case, this is our day-to-day. And I wanted to give you guys a little bit of history of the 24-25 FAFSA. I know we all kind of come from different places in the higher education and education field. And so I just wanted to do a quick recap. In December of 23, the 24-25 FAFSA opened via a soft launch. The functions that should have been in place were not in place. Certain things like FSA ID process for parents with no socials, the direct data exchange, which was the updated way to import your tax returns. And in those months of January, December, we were experiencing frequent outages, waiting rooms, and glitches. So even though it opened, and it opened 2.5 months late, almost 3 months late, it still wasn't really open. So around February, there were continued glitches. Mommy's presenting. Go ask the girls, please. There were continued glitches. The FSA launched a known errors submission page for people to begin submitting errors, and they would kind of acknowledge, the FSA would acknowledge that they knew what the errors were and the glitches were, but there weren't fixes or workarounds yet. They also announced delayed processing of ICERs. At the time, they said until late February, and we know reality was that those ICERs did not begin rolling out until April. Students were unable to make corrections, and then calculation errors and corrections that we were noticing in the formula caused even more delays for students. I just feel like the words are appropriate to say catastrophic delays in the 24-25 FAFSA this year. Around April, the ICERs finally began rolling out to the institutions. Correction capabilities began to open up kind of on a rolling basis for students and families. And then certain functions became more consistent, and workarounds were announced specifically for mixed status families. And so good things are happening now in terms of the 24-25 FAFSA, but it is June. And so a little too late for those good things. So how are we doing with the FAFSA? As of today, 42.5% of seniors nationally have filed their FAFSA, and that is 14.4% down from this time last year. We are making up a little ground because in March, we were about 40% down year over year. And so we are closing that gap slowly but surely, but there is still a very present gap. Kentucky is slightly above the national average, with 42.8% of seniors in Kentucky having filed their FAFSA. We currently rank 19th in all states for overall FAFSA completions, and we are down 16.9% from this week last year. Compared week over to week, we're actually up about 3%. And so let me flesh that out a little bit. So if we look at June 3rd, what does it say? June 3rd. If we look at June 3rd for the 23-24 cycle, we actually had fewer FAFSAs filed than we do June 3rd this week. But that is looking at the week to week. So, let's say that we are week, I don't know, I'm making up numbers here, 35 of the FAFSA cycle. And so week 35 last year, we had fewer FAFSAs filed. But the problem is that overall, we are not week 35 because the start of the 24-25 school year doesn't delay. It's still opening. So that ground has to be made up somewhere. That completion gap still has to be made up somewhere. Are there questions I need to stop and answer, Lily? I see the chat going.
Somebody asked me I think Heidi asked me to put the numbers in the chat. So I was just trying to.
Do you want me to do that really quickly?
That's okay. I mean, I got most of them.
Okay. And I'm happy to share this presentation with Lily to send out to everybody.
Yeah, we'll post this presentation in the Impact Exchange after the meeting.
Fantastic. And so Kia wants to answer the FAFSA completion gap. We know that there is still a gap, 16.9%. We know that time is running out. We have now, most high schools at this point are done for the summer. Our seniors have graduated. And so we've lost our captive audience. And so Kia wants to answer that somehow. How can we fix this? One of the things that we're doing is the hashtag KY Files FAFSA social media campaign. It began May 1st. It's running through July 31st. And that is basically just, we're attempting to blanket social media with messaging to seniors and current college students that say it's not too late to file your FAFSA and there's help to file your FAFSA. And so the thing that we have done to offer that help is we have partnered with a ton of agencies across Kentucky you guys are okay, y'all can walk through. We've partnered with a ton of agencies across Kentucky to offer over 70 locations. We'll host summer office hours every Wednesday in June from 2 to 4 at their local time. And so what that is basically we are marketing any student, any family can go to kygoes2college.com, find a location near them. And if it is a Wednesday in June from 2 to 4, they can walk into that location and there will be someone sitting there ready to help them with their FAFSA. And so if they have 4 opportunities and over 70 locations, we feel very confident that we have answered the need for the students who have now lost their connection to their high school counselor, their college counselors, their admission, maybe they don't have a connection to their admission counselor at their college yet. And so we're really, really excited about the Summer FAFSA Office Hours Initiative. We're so excited and thankful for all of our partners who have really risen to the challenge and said, okay, we want to be a part of this, because again, we've blanketed the state. I mean, there's every pocket of Kentucky has a location where students can go in and get some help. And then we also have a couple of virtual options. So if a student is placebound, they can't get to where they need to go, we've got some links out there where they can join virtually. And then continued and extended support from outreach staff over the summer months. Typically this time of year, we have kind of wrapped up FAFSAs and verifications, and we are just preparing for the next year or doing summer camps or whatever. But we have pivoted and we are now still business as usual for helping with the 24-25 FAFSA. An exciting opportunity that we have with our partners with Gear Up. They're hosting kind of an after the FAFSA, what happens after the FAFSA webinar. I think it's like tomorrow night. Kim, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And so thank you. So parents and students can hop on there and kind of get their questions answered about, okay, I have filed my FAFSA. Now what? Now what do I do? And so we're kind of speaking to all stages of where students would be right now. Our newest initiative, and this is in thanks to a grant that we received for FAFSA summer supports. We've received a sizable grant through ECMC. I'm sure you guys have heard about this. There's a $50 million pot that ECMC is kind of the Department of Ed has provided the money. ECMC is, they're the vehicle to award the money, to review the applications and award the money. And so they are doling out money to help agencies who are already established doing direct student support to essentially pay for them to do more. And so with that grant, we are hosting I put June 22nd in here. This is June 20th. FAFSA training boot camp is taking place June 20th, not June 22nd, to train counselors. I've been working around the clock since we got this grant notification. June 20th to train counselors on summer support. And so counselors will come to the KIA offices. They will, or the morning hours will be up to the minute FAFSA help or FAFSA training in terms of how to help other people. And so, you can learn workarounds, questions and answers, all the things to actually physically help somebody complete the FAFSA. The afternoon will be a training on how to implement our newest initiative, which is FAFSA tailgate parties. And so I was explaining, this is hilarious to me. My husband did not know what a tailgate party was. I take it he wasn't very cool in high school. And so he didn't know what a tailgate party was. I said, okay, it's a party that people have before a game to kind of get pumped up for the game and, to get ready for the game. And so these are FAFSA tailgate parties because they're going to happen right before school starts. So they're happening late July, early August. And we are inviting graduated seniors and current college students to basically say, listen, what do you have left to do? And we want it to be festive. We want you to grill out and we want there to be, games and giveaways. But then the students who come, we want to say, okay, what do you have left to do? Have you applied for admission? Have you filed your FAFSA? Maybe there are students who still have a few of those things to check off their list. They know they're going, but they have a few things left to check off their list. And we want to support those students and say, okay, all you have left is verification. Great. Let us help you get through that. All you have left is, maybe you tried to correct your FAFSA and it didn't work. Well, now there are people here to help you do that because we've been trained to do that. Let's get that finished. Or maybe there's students who 2 weeks ago, right now, weren't thinking about going to college. They felt like August was a lifetime away. And now here we are close to August. Now they can come to this tailgate and we can quickly get them through all the things they need to get through in order to matriculate mid-August. And so those FAFSA tailgate parties ideally will be happening all over the state of Kentucky. And then additionally, with that grant, we are funding some extended call center hours, texting campaigns, social media events happening at increased levels throughout the summer. So lots of good things going on to kind of work through those completion efforts. And those completion efforts were going to happen, that completion gap. We had already planned all of this stuff. That grant just really helps us make it exciting and robust. So some resources for you guys if you want to look into any more of this stuff: kia.com, the Kentucky Goes to College website.com. We have a Better FAFSA, Better Future training center that gets updated. All of our toolkits are on there. All of our, anything you want to sign up for lives on kygoestocollege.com. And then for your students, we actually have created a website that is a step-by-step instruction guide on how to file the FAFSA. So it says, okay, you want to file the FAFSA, let's start. Do you have an FSA ID? Here is a graphic that shows you how to get an FSA ID. If you click on this, here's a video that will walk you through it. And now here's the website. Let's go ahead and do it. And then it kind of drops down to the next step. Okay, now let's identify your contributors. How can we do that? And so that's a really useful website, kyfafsa.org. We received a different grant to also make that a little bit more robust. So we're excited to kind of boost that a little bit. And that second grant is also for some commercials. So we're making some commercials that are a little bit higher quality than our typical just, here's a slideshow with a voiceover. And those are in production this summer. In my free time, my husband is a commercial maker. He makes commercials. He's a commercial producer. So my free time, I help him with that. And so I'm basically making a bunch of commercials this summer on top of everything else I'm doing. So social media, we have monthly Facebook Live events. We have monthly Twitter chats. We have lots of Instagrams, post stories and reels, frequent YouTube videos. The QR code will take you to the contacts for our outreach counselors. Again, there's 14 of them across the state of Kentucky, poised to help to deploy where they need to go and to get these students completed. And we have a new podcast. We are releasing episode 12 tomorrow called Coffee with Kia. It is a podcast where essentially we just discuss everything going on in the financial higher education world. A lot of that was dedicated to FAFSA changes in the beginning, in kind of the early stages of it. We've been doing it since December. But now we talk a little bit about everything FAFSA supports, what we're doing with Kentucky Goes to College initiatives, basically all things higher education we talk. All right. I think I got in under 20 minutes. What questions or discussion do we have? I've not been keeping up with the chat. So if there's things in the chat, I need to look.
There are a few questions in the chat here.
Okay.
Let's see. One was a data question. Do you know if the filers that are down, are they the first-time freshmen or continuing students?
The first-time freshmen.
Okay.
I think so that the numbers, we use the NCAN FAFSA tracker for our numbers, and those numbers really do center around first-time freshmen. So they call it seniors, high school seniors, but the 19th is overall. So we rank 19th in overall FAFSA completions, but the 42.8 and the 19 and the down 17 percentage points or whatever is first-time freshmen.
Okay. And then Christine was asking if you have a flyer with all of these outreach activities that they can send to kind of augment their financial aid offices as the only support system for financial aid or FAFSA support.
I'm happy to create one really quickly and get that to you. It'll take me 5 minutes, so I can create that for you guys.
That would be lovely, Cassie. Anybody have any other questions and thoughts? Other things to add to the discussion on FAFSA?
Lily, this is Heidi. I was just wondering if there is any data on continuing students and where they stand on the filing of FAFSA.
I don't have that immediately, but I can actually reach out to my contact at NCAN, who I'm not a data person, but he is like a data person through and through. He loves it. So I can get you guys those numbers. Okay. Other questions for me or comments? I will say, put the June 20th FAFSA boot camp information up here, and we do want to open that to anyone. It's not just for high schools. We went live with that invitation to basically everyone, come to this FAFSA boot camp, and we went live at 6:30 Thursday afternoon, and we are almost at capacity right now. Our capacity is 150 and we're at like 127. So if you're interested in attending that, run, don't walk to kygoes2college.com and get signed up before we're too full. And really, it's just a space issue. We just don't have space for more than 150 people at Kia.
All right. Well, thank you, Cassie. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Let me stop sharing.
Okay, so we will post this deck in the Impact Exchange for this meeting overview. Cassie will put together a handout flyer with all the outreach activities, and she's also going to pull some continuing student FAFSA completion numbers for us that we'll share out with y'all in the follow-up as well. Okay, now I'm going to transition to our CPE data friends, Chris and Adam, and y'all can share screen and take it away. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. Glad to be here and good to see so many familiar faces. As Lily mentioned earlier, we're going to go through some data today on two really core questions that kind of inform our work here today. One is dual credit and the other is college preparedness. So what's going to follow is we'll kind of do a state of affairs for both. So we'll do a kind of a what's the state of dual credit? How are we? Where are we? What are the implications of those two things for post-secondary success, completion, retention, and so forth? And then at the end of each section, we'll have a discussion and kind of some driving discussion questions. So we'll do dual credit first, and then we'll stop, chat, have some dialogue, and then jump into preparedness. And if I can get my screen up here. All right, Adam, can you see that? Can I get a thumbs up? Good deal. All right. Well, again, good to see everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Ledford. I'm the Associate Director of the Data Unit here at CPE, and I've got Adam Blevins here with me, who works in our area, who's also contributed a lot to this. So we'll start with a discussion of dual credit, participation, and completion. Why dual credit? Research across the country, as many of you all well know, suggests that dual credit participation boosts the likelihood of a lot of things that we care about: college matriculation, first-year success, retention, and completion. Accordingly, and many of our folks in the dual credit area are here, Kentucky a few years ago established a statewide goal to have 50% of all high school graduates complete a dual credit course with a C or higher. So realizing the importance of dual credit, we actually are one of, if not the first in the nation to have a goal like this. So where are we in terms of dual credit participation? Well, the news is good and the trajectory is stark. Over the past 5 academic years, dual credit enrollment has grown 50.7%, and the hours earned have increased pretty similarly at a rate of 56.7% over the same period. Since 2016, dual credit participation among graduating seniors has grown 19.1 percentage points, almost doubled from 23.9 to 43. And then in terms of that completion goal, again, with our 2030 target being at 50%, since 2016, dual credit completions, again, with a C or a better among our graduating seniors, has grown 17.9 percentage points. Certainly a lot to be proud of there. So kind of transitioning into some who and where are these participants coming from, we start by taking a look at dual credit participation across demographic groups. I'm a kind of person, I like to cut to the chase. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I think this is going to be a core focus, or I hope it's a core focus of some of our discussion later. Across this chart, we're going again from 2016 to 2021, our most recent year of data. Those years are the high school graduating cohorts of seniors. The red line in the middle is participation of all seniors in each of those given years. The two lines at the bottom, the purple is for free and reduced price lunch students. The green one is for URM students. And then the two lines, the gray and the blue one above the red, are for their counterparts. So paid lunch students and non-URM students. And you can see very clearly across time that students from low income and underrepresented backgrounds lag their peers in terms of participation. And in that most recent year, so your far right side of the screen, there was almost a 21 percentage point gap between paid lunch and free or reduced price lunch students, and a 14 percentage point gap between URM and non-URM students. So as you know, we think about our work together and how we can increase the college going rate and increase the success and matriculation of our students, and ultimately the retention all the way to a credential. Here, I think we have a tremendous opportunity, which is also reflected in the work of a lot of folks here. Our dual credit team, members of this Commonwealth Education Continuum, CPE, and its partners more broadly. Another thing, so I've pulled out a year here, 2021, dual credit participation across area development districts. I wanted to pull a year out here for the simplicity of viewing this, but the trend is the same across time. One thing that sticks out about dual credit participation across districts is that our three largest area development districts, so KIPTA, which is the Louisville area, out to Shelbyville and the neighboring counties, the Bluegrass area in central Kentucky and Lexington, and then northern Kentucky, which is right there across the river from Cincinnati, typically rank at or near the bottom of dual credit participation by ad. Now, those numbers probably don't look starkly different in terms of proportions. We're going from 43 to 41 to 41 to 40 to 39. But if you think about the size of these places, to put those numbers in context, in 2021, about 26,000 of the 46,000 seniors graduating high school had no dual credit experience at all. Nearly 52% of those students lived in the KIPTA, Bluegrass, and Northern Kentucky districts. So we've got a tremendous opportunity in terms of getting folks participating in dual credit in some of our state's largest urban centers. So to kind of summarize this, and then I'm going to transition to why all of this stuff matters. The good news is that Kentucky is making rapid progress towards its dual credit attainment goal. To put those earlier numbers in perspective, just 5 years ago, in terms of our data recency, the state was 27.2 percentage points under its attainment goal. In the most recent year of data, 2021, the state had trimmed that gap to just 9.3 percentage points. And with what we're seeing with the boosts in dual credit participation, enrollment, and even first year enrollment on the heels of that, we're very excited to see what the 2022 data show when they are released this summer. But again, opportunities in those regional disparities and demographic disparities. So why does all this stuff matter? If you think back to slide 1, I said there's a lot of research across the country, some case studies, some localized studies, some institutional studies that suggest the dual credit has it's the gift that keeps on giving. Dual credit students matriculate at higher rates. They do better in their first year. They retain from that first year and ultimately go on to get credentials. And let me tell you, just right here up front, in Kentucky, that's absolutely the case. College going rates among Kentucky's graduating seniors are much higher for dual credit attempters and completers compared to those who don't attempt dual credit at all. Over this period, we're ranging from a 34-ish to a 33 to about a 40% gap in dual credit matriculation versus the matriculation of non-attempters. Interestingly, we also looked at where students are taking dual credit and where they end up matriculating. I do have this broken out by institutions for folks who are at institutions and may be interested in that. Be happy to provide it after we get done today. But interestingly, so the blue boxes across this chart are the proportion of dual credit enrollment by sector. So our 2-year public, 4-year public, and 4-year private. And then the orange boxes are the proportion of those students who matriculated where they enrolled. So you can see this kind of, the left box and the box in the center are probably jumping out at you right now. It's probably no surprise to folks who are up with dual credit that the majority of students take dual credit courses at KCTCS campuses, about 53%, but only 29.5% of those students who matriculate enroll in their first college year at KCTCS. Conversely, you see a much smaller number enrolling in dual credit at our 4-year publics, but a much higher number go on to enroll for their first college semester, first college year at a 4-year public institution. And just based on my kind of deep dive into those data, the University of Kentucky reaps the most of those students, but the gains are universal across the 8 4-year public institutions. Again, thinking about why this matters, we're following these students through the pipeline. Dual credit attempters have much higher first-year GPAs compared to those who did not participate. About a 0.45 point higher, almost a half a point higher first-year GPA than non-participants. And you may look at that and think, well, a half a point, that's not much. But over the course of just one academic year, a half a grade point is very significant difference there over time. Further, students who take dual credit, again, that blue line up at the top, they take more hours or attempt more credit hours in their first term. Over this 10-year period, about 1.3 more credit hours in the first term. So you're looking at 2 to 3 over a course of an academic year. And, ultimately, if that carries out, you're talking about potentially shorting the time to a bachelor's degree by semester, or more, depending on, if that kind of rate stacks as we go out from the first year. So really a profound success implication there. Dual credit students also have much higher retention rates compared to non-attempters who have matriculated. On average, dual credit participants who matriculated returned for a second year of college at an 11.8% higher rate over this 10-year period than non-participants. And then finally, before I dive too deep into this, I want to make it clear that I stopped the analysis on this. So we've been looking at 2011 to 2022-23, allowing with a year on the back end of 2022-23 for a retention year. I stopped this analysis at 2017, kind of like what we would do to calculate a 6-year graduation rate. So for folks who came in 2017, they would just now, in this most recent year, have had time to complete a bachelor's degree. So I'm only looking at students who enrolled in that period to make sure that we've got an apples to apples comparison. So just a disclaimer there. But among first-time students who enrolled in this period, so who matriculated from high school and were first-time students in those years between 2011 and 2017, those who participated in dual credit had a 21.5 percentage point higher completion rate than students who did not participate in dual credit. And again, I allowed 6 years on the back end of this, but for students who enrolled during that period, I'm allowing for any credential earned whatsoever. We could further dive into this and look at discrepancies between credential completion, associate completion, and bachelor's completion. But here alone, just accounting for all credentials, really, really stark trend here. So just to recap, across demographic groups, dual credit participants are much more likely to matriculate than non-participants. Once matriculated, those who took dual credit are more likely to be successful, retain, and complete compared to non-participants. And just to recap, I know we've hit a lot of numbers, but about a 0.5 point GPA in the course of an academic year, a little over 1 credit hour higher attempted in the first term, almost a 12 percentage point higher retention rate, and almost a 22 percentage point completion rate up through that 2017 first time cohort. So I want to stop there and open this up for discussion. Kind of a broad question. What does this information mean for admissions? But more specifically, how can we potentially shrink those demographic groups that we saw earlier? Again, dual credit participation has success impacts across demographic groups, but we've got to get more students across demographic groups into the race in the first place. How can we achieve that? Again, those regional gaps, some stark disparities between our region, rural and urban areas. How can we increase overall dual credit participation? And then finally, looking at those college going rates, in the most recent year, the dual credit participants had about a 75% college going rate. But still, there's a lot of opportunity there. We know what dual credit means for success down the line. So how can we juxtapose that with a targeted approach or a strategy perhaps to get those 25% of attempters who don't matriculate into the college pipeline? So Lily, I'm going to turn it back over to you and stop there and see what discussion we can get going.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, the floor is open, everyone. We have about 15 minutes right now, and feel free to raise your hand and ask questions and, share your thoughts and insights. Robin?
Yeah, thanks, Lily, and thanks, Chris. You did a great job presenting that. It's really exciting news about dual credit in Kentucky. I did want to just mention one thing that we have tried over the last couple of years. We're in our second year right now of doing a dual credit bridge program. It's where CPE has offered small mini grants to institutions of higher education where they could partner with a high school to specifically target students who have not been enrolled in dual credit in the past. And so we're really interested in trying to attract and support students who might be from first generation college going families or in some of the other demographics that you mentioned, Chris. And so we know that these programs have been successful in terms of getting students there. And just anecdotally, we've heard from the institutions that their withdrawal rates are lower than normal, but nothing, nothing official, no sort of official data analysis has been done. But that is one thing that we've been working with to try to close some of those gaps that we see across Kentucky. This is just one of the things I wanted to mention. I didn't know if everybody here was aware of it. So thanks, Chris.
One thing that I would add on to that, and I kind of hit it earlier, but just to explicate a little better, the 2022 high school feedback report, which is where most of this information comes from, will be coming out here in just a few weeks, I imagine. And I'm really anxious to see how some of these patterns look in that most recent year, because I know that a lot of the dual credit goal, for example, and a lot of the work of CPE and the CEC and all of the branches off of that, those cohorts that are graduating would really, and that we would see in the 2022 HSFR, would really be the first kind of groups to start benefiting from all that work. And I think there's reason to be optimistic about what those findings will be, but anxious to dig into that stuff here in a few weeks.
Is this what folks were anticipating we would learn from a dual credit deep dive? Were there any surprising kind of takeaways?
I will say, I am surprised by what you pulled out, Chris, about the urban areas are our lowest participation. Now, I know our denominators are larger there, but one would assume that the options are broader and more available in those communities. So I was surprised by that. I think, sitting over here in a program that works in the space between K-12 and post-secondary, and this is a huge conversation in the Europe community nationally, what and that gap that you talked about, Chris, and that we know exists and is significant. I think there's a lot of opportunity to, I think a lot of it is just simply about communication and communicating the availability of options and the impact of what dual credit can do for you as a student, both academically and financially, saving you time and money. But I think there's lots of opportunity to be way more strategic in our in our high schools about this opportunity earlier and more consistent. And I could shout out to Mitzi, the director of the Kentucky Advising Academy, who has led conversations with schools about looking at their process of who are you recruiting, who are you inviting to this table, right? Who are you considering worthy and available and able to do this work? And are you looking at the students that aren't always your head of class leaders and being willing to provide them with the support that they need to be successful? So thank you for Chris. This gets me really excited. This is a big area of focus where we really want to double down in our next project. And so thank you for the data to show the impact of it.
Sure thing. And you brought up a great point about the counts versus the proportions. And I just wanted to tack on there, those three districts of the urban districts around Cincinnati, Louisville, and then Lexington, they do have the largest raw counts of dual credit participants, but proportionally they also have the lowest participation rates. But yeah, you're right. You're exactly right there.
don't know if anyone remembers back to our first meeting on this topic last September, but dual credit was kind of, it seems like an opportunity population for some real strategic admissions opportunities. And so I'm just curious if folks have thought, if this is bringing up any ideas for you all, or things that you haven't done yet, or things that you are doing currently, that you think would be relevant to our project and the strategy recommendations and areas that we would move down, just seeing the success and the great opportunity of this population.
Lily, this is Heidi, and I would say there's a lot of opportunities with dual credit, both from opportunities to make it more seamless for students to apply, schools to get partnerships with universities on what's being offered, as well as helping high school students understand what are truly beneficial dual credit courses to take based off of what they want to do when they go to college.
Mhm.
So I think I have a couple of comments in this area. I think one of the pieces that I was interested in too was we always are talking about the substantial benefits of dual credit, and particularly from a retention standpoint, as we've done, Christopher, institutional data, that's what we see. Students with zero credit hours coming in are our highest retention risk. But when we talk about the college going rate, one of the questions that I had was relative to the career readiness and students going through career readiness as another platform, right? So like, is there a higher percentage of students that are going career ready and then into the workforce, so that the overall number of students that are looking for a 2 or 4 year degree is different? So like that kind of mix of, is there trend data over the past couple of years of the uptake and the populations and the outcomes, not for dual credit alone, but when you partner with both of those scholarship opportunities for students. There's a fair amount of information I know on there, but pulling it into a PowerPoint would be great, because you can look at the spending and the cost for career ready and other things. And so it would be nice if we could have a presentation on those two in the whole, in the aggregate. I do think to support what some other people have mentioned is that there are some communication challenges. Our process is very different for dual credit. We are partnering specifically with schools where the college going rate can be positively impacted. So we're looking for schools that are willing to partner. There's an equity stake. There are things like that. We make sure that to the point of gatekeeping, that is expanded in terms of the students. But then there's also a lot more support that the school, in terms of the engagement, they're partnering with our faculty. So it's a very different approach. And we also have positions that are there to support students when you look at kind of expanding out beyond that, because I do think we're increasing with the students that are already going to go to college. And the only way to increase the college going rate is to get those that aren't, but there is a need for support. Adam Bolin, who's on this call, we put a position in, he can talk more eloquently about it, but that really was to facilitate and help with some of this work, but mostly is answering a lot of questions for students and families about dual credit and how to get into it, and how credit is coming in from other institutions, because there's a missing piece. And I think we all know the stressors that our high school counselors are under, and the bandwidth. And so I do think that there are needs in terms of information getting to the right people at the right time about how to navigate and do this, and the support. And it's not just an easy, we need to make sure more people are doing it. But so I just share that to say that it is critical. It is a focus for us, but also, as we've grown in a little different way, looking specifically at how to use this to impact college going rates with partnerships with schools, it has also required us to provide additional support and then more broadly, just the position in our office, we are getting tons and tons of questions from students and families around the state about, if I take this at this institution, which may be another 4-year institution, how is it going to transfer? Because there's that gap of that information. And not to say it's not out there, it's just maybe not proliferating or hitting students and families in the right way, in the right space.
Christine, one follow-up question related to the kind of additional data request you mentioned around the Work Ready high school scholarship kind of piece to that. Is that I know we talked about that in September as well. Is that something that you have written out, or you have kind of, got some bullets around what that question is? Because that would be really helpful to clarify, I think.
Yeah, I certainly can. I mean, I think bottom line is you have 2 scholarship programs through KIA, one focused on career readiness and one on dual credit. Students in the career readiness track could still be going to 2-year and 4-year institutions, but it'd be nice to see, as we just saw the data on dual credit and the increases there, can we mirror that and put the information about the other scholarship program, which we should have that data, and then look at, outcomes. So I think it's just taking what dual credit presentation just happened with the career ready and then laying them over. It can be a separate one, but laying them over would be helpful from where my mind is, which is, I don't know what that outcome is. I don't know that students, I wouldn't say that all students in career ready are not going to 2- and 4-year institutions. They may very well be. But I don't know, how many more are going into just going into apprenticeship programs and going into the workforce and what have you. Not having that data paired with the college going rates and the kind of output, I think is only a portion of the story. So does that
Thank you. Yeah, that is. All right, well, this is kind of perfect timing to transition over to the next half of the data project. And one thing that I always recognize about data is that it really is helpful in getting you to think about more things that you want to know. And so we'll definitely be able to continue to dig deeper into the data as we ask more questions, or as we think more deeply about what we need to know in order to better improve our programming and our opportunities. So, all right, I'll turn it back over to you, Chris.
All right, thanks so much. So again, similar format as last time, kind of look at the state of preparedness, or I'm actually going to say underpreparedness, because of how the indicator is, the direction of the indicator. But we'll look at the trends and kind of the state of preparedness, and then we will kind of transition to implications for student success, and then go on to our discussion time again. Lily, can you see that? Good deal, thanks. So starting out, throughout our preparedness or under-preparedness measure, as most of you know, determined by benchmark scores on placement exams, which are in state policy. Here we're looking at under-preparedness of first-time students by demographic groups, again, looking at the most recent 5 years. And pretty quickly apparent that under-resourced and underrepresented students are more likely to be underprepared relative to the overall first-time student population. Just over 38% of underrepresented minority students underprepared, almost 30% low income, a little over 26% for first generation students, and then the overall rate is just under 20%. So some pretty big gaps there. Kind of cutting that same information a different way. So of the underprepared population, almost, or a little over 58% were low income, disproportionately more likely to be from an underrepresented minority background. Sorry for my loss of command of English. I have just gotten back from Colorado So bear with me. And first gen students, 28% of the underprepared population. Moving along, there's a lot going on here, but if you can kind of look at these bar charts in pairs, you've got non-URM, URM, not low income, and then low income, not first gen and first gen, and then overall. And what we're looking at in each comparison is ACT scores by English in blue, the orange is composite, and then the green is math. There, we find disparities in average composite ACT scores that are prevalent across, again, underrepresented and under-resourced students. Some of you may be looking at these scores, these average scores, and thinking, wow, these are really high. Just want to make a note here that these are scores among matriculated students, which means that they're much higher than the state average, like if we were to look at all high school test takers. I was just sitting in on a test optional seminar at the Air Forum in Colorado a few days ago, and somebody kept stating over and over and over one empirical truth or fact about ACT scores is that most of the bad ones we don't get, right? Students don't send us the bad ones. If they have good ones, they're confident in them. They send them on to their schools. So these numbers are a little bit inflated to what the averages would look like for these groups coming straight out of high school. But again, big disparities across racial and ethnic demographic groups, and then first gen and income groups. Looking at our high school GPAs over the same period by demographic group, again, a similar pattern emerges and disparities across our first-time students. Again, under-resourced, so our first-gen and low-income students, and then underrepresented students have much lower high school GPAs coming in compared to their counterparts, not first-gen, non-URM, and not low-income. Unfortunately, this chart worked out in a nice way where all three of those underrepresented and under-resourced groups are below the mean GPA there in the middle at 3.11, and then their counterparts are all above the mean. So really highlighting some disparities. Moving along, so we're kind of integrating the two of these sort of readiness or preparedness measures with ACT and high school GPA. This chart's really interesting to me in many ways. So what you're looking at, you can look at the colors at the bottom or just look at the lines going up the chart. Each line going up of the colored lines are bins of high school GPA in half-point increments. And then going across the x-axis is ACT composite score, and these are being plotted against the college going rate. So you can kind of see, for example, at the top line there in red, students with a very high school GPA are overwhelmingly more likely than other groups to go to college throughout the range of ACT scores. Kind of similar, but less stark of a pattern for the next GPA bin down, so on and so on and so on. Another note, you're probably wondering, well, why do all these lines stop shorter than the one above them? That's because there's redaction at the end of those lines. So if I were to try to carry them out to 35, there's redaction out there because of small sample size, which is also telling in and of itself, if you think about it. The fact that very low GPA line, so the green line at the bottom, and it doesn't go out to high ACT scores because there's no sample out there. One thing that jumps out to me about this is if you plot these lines against the state rate, and we're thinking about admissions ideas, target students that we can target, help get them over the edge. And then assuming best case that happens, also thinking about academic supports, maybe summer bridge programs for these folks. What can we do with this, assuming we're looking at the individual level data set that makes this, we can use information like this to target students who are in these buckets, who are at these intersections, kind of in the center of this picture, around the state rate, maybe a little above, a little below, who, some efficient outreach, targeting, programmatic initiatives could really boost the overall college going rate. Really like this chart, and I think with the individual level data behind it, there's a lot of things that we could do from a targeting perspective and the efficacy of that. So jumping into the last section, why
Chris,
does all
before you jump there, before we get too far, can you, with the GPA and the ACT slide, the separate ones, you note on the ACT that that's for matriculating students. I'm sorry, the right here, yeah. So is the GPA for matriculating students? Like, is the population on the slide before this the same population as this one?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Because you called out matriculating students, I just wanted to make sure it's the same population as I'm looking at the data.
Gotcha. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. So why does all this stuff matter? Kind of a similar story as before. Preparedness translates to success, higher retention rates, as you're going to see. Again, a theme that kind of is operating in the background here is that underprepared students have considerably lower first-year GPA compared to prepared students. And again, this transcends demographic groups. So what's being compared there is prepared, which is the blue box for each of the demographic groups, to the green box, and then the very light blue box is the difference between them. On the one hand, you might look and say, well, for some of our targeted populations here, that light blue box has got a smaller number compared to the all student group. But I would also point out that the GPAs of underprepared students in each of those groups is also quite a bit lower compared to the all student population. Some really interesting stuff here. Looking at first year post-secondary GPA as a function of high school GPA and preparedness. So each of these buckets, again, we've got high school GPA bend, and then the average post-secondary GPA in the first term represented by the columns. As high school GPA increases, we're seeing that the gap across post-secondary GPAs earned by prepared and underprepared students widens. And again, this trend is similar across demographic groups. I didn't want to spend like 6 slides breaking this out by demographic groups, but we can visit those at the end if anybody's interested.
Chris, can you go back one slide?
Yep.
I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting this right. So a student, let's just look at the 3.5 to 4.0. So they got a high school GPA of 3.5 to 4.0. And then this is their college, their first semester post-secondary GPA here.
Yes.
And the orange bar means that they were underprepared on the ACT, even though their high school GPA was a 3.5 to 4.0.
Yes. So
Okay.
it could be the ACT composite or any of the subject area scores.
Okay. And then their first semester GPA was a 2.87. But if they were a subject, if they were prepared on their test, then they were a 3.19. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of information.
Another busy one, but we're looking here at first year post-secondary GPA by the composite ACT score. And then our groupings are non-URM, and then the overall group again is in orange, and the URM group is in green. One thing that stands out, students with a composite ACT score of 16 and above are obtaining post-secondary GPAs above 2.0 in their first academic year, which stood out to me because I think that's kind of the academic standing kind of cut point at all, if at most, if not all of our institutions. But again, gaps exist between URM and non-URM students across these ACT brackets. Kind of interesting finding there. Similarly here, so our blue and green comparisons this time are not low income and low income. Here we see the difference across these ACT buckets in post-secondary GPA are quite a bit wider than they were for the URM and non-URM students. And consistent with what we've done so far, that's a theme that I think we're going to spend some time on later. Throughout this, as we finish up here and move forward, the kind of suppressing effect that low income status and first gen status have, even as one's preparedness increases or readiness increases, is very significant. Again, we see the same kind of thing I just mentioned here with non-first gen students and first gen students. Even as students are more ready across these groups, there's significant gaps between prepared non-first gen students and underprepared first gen students that kind of transcends the range of this. And again, that those gaps are bigger than what we observed for the URM and non-URM students. And then quickly transitioning to retention. Some stuff.
Chris, can I make just one comment? My comment is in relation to, so the emphasis on GPA is in terms of a predictor of success is something I think within the enrollment management industry we've absolutely seen. How would cutting this data down in terms of considering the knowledge loss as a result of the pandemic, when there was NTI and you had some students that were, heavily engaged and others that were not, and then thereafter the impact in terms of the inflation of grading and the disparity between that. How do you think that may change this narrative when you look at, let's say, 17 to 20 versus 20 to 23? That's my question.
Oh, that's a great question. I think, well, to your first point, we can do these with the individual data that we have. Like we can isolate these students and kind of actually statistically model these things if we want, which broadly is what I want to do with all of this, beyond some of these descriptive terms. I would like to actually model, statistically model these things, while holding other factors constant. But applying that to your case that you mentioned with the kind of the pandemic era, we can do that. We can isolate these courses. Here we tend to cut things in these 5-year chunks just for summary purposes, but we can certainly do that. We can compare, we can chunk out the descriptives, kind of like you mentioned, like a pre-COVID, post-COVID, but we can also look at we can model these things with cohorts of students, and I think you're apt to bring that to consideration here.
Yeah, and I bring that up because of the emphasis on URM students and what we know in terms of that population in regards to. I'm sorry, one second. I apologize to everyone already. Yeah, I just that has been an ongoing conversation in terms of how we utilize the grade point average in a way that that shows fidelity to this URM subgroup. And I'm just curious, as we go further away from the pandemic, how much things are normalizing, after we've returned back, to this traditional modality. So.
Yeah, great points. And I know our team's capturing this in our notes, so we'll definitely dig into that and account for it. I meant to mention earlier, I've kind of mentioned this idea of doing some modeling and individual level, using some individualized data. Those data, we're kind of waiting on approval for an MOU from the state, from KDE, and then through our partners at KY Stats. So any questions like this where we can tease things out, had some good questions earlier too. We're going to have the most up-to-date individual data for all of Kentucky's graduates here within a matter of weeks, I hope. So feel free to throw questions out like this, because it'll certainly be stuff that we consider as we start looking into those data.
And Chris, do you have the data on modality for each of the individual schools and school districts?
Yeah, I will have the newest course level data for every student.
Okay, because we tracked that when we went to test optional. We asked in the incoming survey what their modality was, and when you correct for performance coming in, the students that were hybrid or in person had much higher retention rates than those that were,
Sure.
which we would understand. But because we were moving to test optional, we wanted to make sure that we were not throwing, like, if we figured we might have some retention challenges, and we wanted to make sure we knew what could try to isolate, and that's what our data showed.
Sure. We have in the past, we kind of have a recurring request, I guess, for these data. Some folks might be familiar with some of the early dual credit studies that CPE did. They're colloquially known as dual credit 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0. They're the same data sets that made those in the preparedness studies that we've done in the past. So we're kind of just waiting on the newest batch of data, which would carry us up through the 22 cohort, I guess, graduating cohort. So we can really do a deep dive into kind of updating that work and also driving this conversation, with inferential statistics with the latest data. So soon, we hope. Moving on into kind of our last bucket of success stuff, looking at retention. There's a lot of interesting things on these next couple of slides to me. And again, I put a sector average kind of earlier. I did the statewide college going rate. Here we've put the sector average here. And again, I just kind of see this, like I'm seeing people here around this line, if you'll humor me for a second. But just from the data perspective, starting at that bin of 22 to 24 on the composite ACT scores, second year retention rates for both URM and non-URM students are lower than the sector on average. But in that bucket, and for each of the scores, as I recall, when we look at these kind of separately, that's really close to the sector average. And, stepwise, we're going down from there, going from right to left, back down the composite score. But, how can we start using our individual data and identifying folks who are around this cut line, in terms of targeted intervention, or perhaps, once admitted, some extra wraparound supports or student supports where they would likely be most efficacious. You know, they're pretty likely to return, but how can we pull students up in that group up over that line? A little bit of a different pattern here, and again, this echoes some kind of a recurring theme throughout. This is looking at that same chart, but the comparison groups in blue and green are non-low income and low income. And across this chart, you see that low income status really has a more pronounced and deleterious impact on retention likelihood. Only up in the scores in that 28 to 30 ACT bin and above do our low income students have higher retention rates than the sector average. So again, how can we, use our individual data across the system between the agency, the state, and our institutions to identify folks who are at the intersection of these demographic identities and these success metrics or these preparedness metrics, and target those from an efficiency perspective to pull that sector average up. And again, a similar score again, or excuse me, not a similar score, but a similar theme. First gen status, like low income status, has a strong countervailing pull against retention, even as ACT composites are going up. Only those with scores in the highest ACT composite bins have higher retention rates relative to the sector average. But again, how can we look at students who are kind of right below that line, who are standing on top of those green bars, if you will, from a targeted initiative perspective. And on this, we're looking at first to second year retention by high school GPA and URM status. So we've switched from our 3 charts on ACT composite now to our demographic groups, looking at GPA by first year retention. Students in the 3.0 to 3.5 GPA bin, so the one in the middle and below, have lower retention rates compared to the sector average. And again, that's for both URM and non-URM students. Just looking at that kind of dichotomous cut. Similar trend across income status, students in that middle bin, so they had a 3.0 to 3.5 high school GPA and below. They have lower retention rates compared to the sector average. But again, as kind of been a running theme throughout, the gaps between the low income and not low income students are wider in those buckets, going across the chart. And again, we see a similar trend with first gen status. Students in that 3.0 to 3.5 high school GPA bin and below, so moving right to left from the middle, have lower retention rates compared to the sector average. But again, within those buckets, the gaps between the not first gen students, or the blue, and the first gen students, who are green, are wider than some of the other demographic groups that we looked at. But just to summarize, and then we'll open it back up for some great discussion. Key takeaways: preparedness measures, which have again, those are constructed with benchmark. Did a student score above or below the state benchmark on the ACT subject areas and the composite score? We also looked at the actual ACT scores in the subject areas and high school GPA. All of those seem to be related to college success and retention. Those trends generally hold across demographic groups, for low income or not low income, URM, not URM, first gen or not first gen. However, as we've kind of seen throughout first gen status in particular and low income status have stronger countervailing effects to those patterns at the intersections with those identities. So even as preparedness makes you more successful, or higher ACT scores, or a stronger high school GPA, low income status and first generation status have some countervailing effects against that, even though the general pattern is true. And again, looking at these charts is helpful, but know that there are individual data in the background. Again, I just wonder, how can we leverage these data to look at folks who are around these kind of cut points in these middle of these charts, right below, right above those lines, where we could really focus some targeted, efficient initiatives and strategies to raise college going and success rates. So some questions. How are admissions folks supplementing test optional policies? How is academic preparedness impacting student success on your campuses? And then something we've kind of hit on, how can we better integrate academic support, specifically at some of those intersections that we've been talking about throughout the whole talk, into admissions, into summer bridge programs, into first year programs for those matriculated first time students. Lily, that's all for weather. Back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. All right. Well, we welcome some great discussion on this topic, and how you all think it's currently informing your work, should inform our admissions redesign as we move forward, other data questions it brings up for you, initial reactions, things that surprised you, etc. Some really good data. I think also, connecting the dots between the preparedness and the dual credit, I think I'm very interested to actually see that connection of maybe who's taking dual credit by GPA and ACT is very interesting, because the dual credit has such positive impact. And how does that impact, or just who's participating related to ACT and GPA performance? That is kind of a question that I was thinking about on Friday, Adam, when we were kind of running through this.
Yeah, and I think if we're on the same wavelength, I think that comment that you just made is why I'm most excited about kind of the data that we have, the updated data that we have coming, because we'll be able, with all high school students, so dual credit and not, or prepared or not, and not just data on the post-secondary side for some of this, we'll be able to isolate these things while controlling for the others, because they're most certainly all related. And somebody made that comment earlier, like, the people who are taking dual credit, they're already more likely to be doing well. They're probably already more likely to be prepared. They're more likely to take and do well on the ACT. So, as compelling as some of these cuts are that we have here, we'll really be able to isolate, what is driving readiness and success, at the individual level, as we've done in the past.
Well, if there are no other thoughts or comments, I know we had some good discussion throughout that presentation, so that's okay. We don't have to continue to wait in silence, although I'm very good at that. Okay. All right. Well, I will move us along, and feel free to continue to pop questions in the chat. If you have additional questions you would like to ask of Chris and Adam, they will be able to kind of continue to, I think, respond via chat. And I'm going to turn it over to our partner, Errol, who is going to hopefully share some of the cool highlights that we all learned and took away from the AI webinar series.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Lily. And again, thank you all for your patience. Mornings in the summer are with my daughter, and then the afternoon is camp. So we've got her on the side doing her thing, and but she may pop in or pop out. So I appreciate you all being understanding of that. Okay, so I'd like to go 80,000 feet in the air, and then I want to bring it down to the individual AI webinar series. Today, the webinar overview is not going to be a full-out presentation, but it's really meant to whet your palate. So where we're at in terms of the admissions redesign project, Dr. Ledford just gave the Discovery Project 3. Lena has done Discovery Project 1 in terms of the student journey. The AI webinar series is 2. Then we've got this data for 3, and then later I'm going to talk about Discovery Project 4, which is going to be the focus groups with your staff members, and all of that is going to lead us into the September convening on September the 13th, which is going to bring all of the partners across the state of Kentucky, university partners, as well as your high school partners together to be able to ideate through a design thinking session that is going to help inform your processes, right? The outcome of that, all right, is going to be an output that provides recommendations for spring yield of 2025. All right, not only for CPE in terms of directionality on asserting their resources, but also for each of you all as enrollment planning leaders to really think about how you can optimize the spring with this new knowledge. And I say this, I'm really excited that we're doing it this year, especially after the past year that you all have had and are still currently in. Jenny Sawyer said in our guiding team meeting this past month that in a lot of ways, with everything that's happening with the FAFSA, this feels a lot like what it was during the pandemic. And I know when I was leading my enrollment operation during the pandemic, we had 18 decentralized schools that we were trying to align. And the summer was, with everybody working to honor vacations and also closing the class, we really tried to spend time giving everybody either, some kind of discovery project information, but also time to reflect. So you're going to hear those elements throughout today's presentation. But now bringing it down to the micro, today I'm going to talk and give you just kind of the high level of this past month's AI webinar series. As Lily mentioned, I'm really excited about it. We worked with one of the partners who is in the industry to really tailor it to the enrollment planning, the enrollment management world. So it's not just artificial intelligence in general, but it is certainly AI going through there. So give me 1 second. Let me. All righty. So this is so we had an AI webinar series, okay? And the intention of this is to position you all as enrollment planning leaders, give you a one-stop shop ability to capture a comprehensive contextual understanding of this rapidly evolving world of artificial intelligence. As you all, full knowledge, you all are incredibly busy. So, and there's so much information that's going on out at once. We wanted to kind of give it all to you together. It will inform the ideation sessions in the future as we think about solutions to really reimagine admissions as an extension of this project. So this gives us a kind of a step-by-step look at how it's been used in the industry and how it could be used moving forward. And so we partnered with artist Kaiju from Element 451. I intentionally brought him forward because of his more operational mindset in terms of as a software designer. And he did a great job of really kind of bringing the technicalities in. And then I brought my experience in terms of my enrollment management background to the table to really guide the content so that everyone that was receiving it really felt like it was relevant to them. So the goals of the session, and I put these in the form of questions and try to really capture the who, what, where, when, and why. Really understand at a foundational level, what is artificial intelligence? And then why does it matter to the higher education enrollment planning professional now? I'll say in short, we are selling this readiness for the world product that is the college experience. And so being able to integrate that into the very processes that are shepherding students through, I think is now more important now than ever. So I think the foresight of Lily and CP and her team to really make sure that we had this piece in it was huge. The second piece, where do I start in terms of establishing that knowledge base? I think there's a lot of insecurity around adopting new technology. I know I certainly had it. I appreciate going through this process to learn more myself about artificial intelligence, but this series gives you really clear directionality on where you can start and how you can continue to expand that knowledge with several resources. The third piece is how can you develop future forward enrollment strategies that consider this rapidly emerging world of artificial intelligence. Gone are the days, right, where it's just, let's reset the cycle and let's just schedule our high school visits, right? And let's just sit in the lunchroom counters and talk to students. Part of this admissions redesign is saying the world is changing. How do we think about the future processes that are going to provide a differentiating value proposition with AI in the forefront? And then who are the essential enrollment stakeholders within my organization that will benefit from exposure to this content? As I've mentioned before, the summers during my leadership years and as an admissions leader was spent exposing our stakeholders on campus to this information, starting from my office of admissions and then going out to the campus partners. I encourage you all to think about, as you move into your summer planning exercises, how can you use this in your individual planning efforts moving forward? So we had 4 installments. One was kind of the baseline AI literacy. The second was AI skills. Third was ethics. And then the fourth was the application, where we went through some examples. All right. Oh, sorry. Let me do a stop share for a moment. Oh, they're hidden. I was like, why are you not showing? Give me 1 second. Okay, we are back. All right, going back to, okay, so for the first session, some of the key highlights, and what I'll do is I'm just gonna go through the bullet points, and then I'll hop over and just show you a couple of the slides. Again, this is meant to whet your palate. We're not gonna go through everything in great detail. We got everything recorded as well as the slide decks. But for the first session, we went through foundational knowledge around AI. What is AI? The who, what, where, when, and why. We looked at the history of AI from the mid 1900s all the way to present, and then the rapid ascension of AI over the last decade. And then we kind of, as you see in this visual, we went through artificial intelligence all the way down to machine learning, deep learning, large learning models, and then generative AI to be able to think about it like that. We talked in the session also about predictive modeling versus generative AI. AI use case examples as well within enrollment management so that we could really make it relevant to this audience, and then also broader examples. And then finally, we talked about how we could utilize enrollment planning in 3 categories: experience, productivity, teaching and learning. So I thought that was a really, really good session. And I thought that we really got a lot out of it. Here we are. I'm going to share this just to give you a couple of looks at some of the slides. So as you can see, this is the total slide presentation, which is on the Impact Exchange. We hit on, as I've mentioned before, that the predictive versus generative AI, and talk through that. I thought that was a really good part of this session. We did some initial Chat GPT reviews, which we didn't go too deep into it in this session. That's later for the skills session, but we definitely built on that as we move forward. We talked about what's kind of the holdup, so as you use this resource for your respective stakeholders, this gives you a chance to also identify some of the concerns and the fears, in terms of engaging in AI. And again, these are all previews for the later sessions. And then finally, every session has a resource. This one takes you to Enrollify, which is a bank of artificial intelligence resources for higher education marketers and enrollment management professionals. Certainly, there are a lot out there. This was one, as we canvassed the field, that we ended up recognizing as a good one to go forward with. Okay, so to the next session, we then moved. Excuse me. We then moved into the AI skills overview. I feel like if you were to look at the 4 sessions and you're like, Errol, what's the most functionally valuable session? I would point to this session above all. This is where we really got our hands dirty in terms of going into the different AI minds, the Chat GPT, Gemini, Claude, but we really focus on Chat GPT in terms of prompt engineering exercises. How do you go ahead and work with these tools, to optimize not only your individual micro level use, but integrating it within your larger organizational structure. We thought about it in terms of planning for productivity within your enrollment planning operation. We looked at content generation, personalization, the idea generation as well. As you can see, research, campaign strategy, email marketing, all of that. I'm not going to read off. You can read. But it was a very engaging session, a lot of questions back and forth. We also took large data sets, in Excel spreadsheets, and showed how you can plug it into the AI model and have them do a lot of the work that you may have your data analysts do. So I would say, as I think about the quantitative element of this line of work, this was incredibly valuable for me as we went through. And as you can see with this session in terms of the skills, I'm going to go to we really dug into the anatomy of a good prompt. Again, that's the part that I thought was really valuable. And we walked through just, elements like intent, articulating an end goal. We walked through a Chat GPT example. How you can go ahead and create directionality. So if you're looking for something that's very technical, very practical, I think every leader, if you're in this admissions redesign network, this is something that will get you right on board to really begin using it as an extension of yourself, and then be able to speak intelligently and knowledgeably to your higher education enrollment stakeholders, because quite frankly, the higher education industry is been slower to adopt artificial intelligence. And that's according to McKinsey research when they look at all the different industries. So this positions you to be really at the forefront of what it is that we're doing. Same thing as before, several resources that were put out there. The one I really want to highlight is this course, which is normally $200. We negotiated a deal with Element 451 just for this admissions redesign network to get it for free. You just have to put that code in, and it is a course on the higher ed marketer's guide to prompt engineering. All right. Moving forward, AI ethics. So this session was more conversational. It was effectively like a podcast episode between Artis and I, where we walked through a lot of the named concerns. So we have a guiding team of the enrollment, the chief enrollment officers from each of the 8 public universities. And back in September, there was a convening where they gave us feedback in terms of what are the primary focus areas. And when we talked about artificial intelligence, there were several different concerns: fairness, transparency, accountability, data fidelity, all of this. And so we shaped this conversation to address those concerns, but also some of the really emergent hot topics in terms of AI ethics. And so we talked about bias, in terms of systematic efforts, errors in terms of terms of the AI knowledge, the data piece. We've heard stories about pumping things through AI and then it not coming back accurate. I think there was a story up in New York where there was a lawyer that had used AI for his case, and then it didn't come out correct, and it lost his law license. Craziness, right? And it just was and then we talked about the human versus artificial intelligence, and what AI can perform. When AI can perform a task as well as a human, what does that mean for the future of our industry? How does that allow us to embrace or reject artificial intelligence, and just kind of the turning point we're at in terms of the dissonance within ourselves. So if you are having individuals that you're trying to create buy-in around, and you want to say, look, these are the tough truths about artificial intelligence. It's here, it's happening, we're moving forward, but we want to create, an infrastructure, policies that, that are based off of moral principles that guide the responsible use of AI. This session would be the one that I would say hone in on and point to. For the AI ethics series for this, you can kind of see all of this. I'm going to point out in terms of the resources, and you saw this in the slide deck. We've got a podcast episode that we're recommending for this in terms of bias in admissions, and how AI plays a role within that. I'm also going to point out from a resource, deepfake. So this goes back to the fidelity to actual data within artificial intelligence and what that means. And then, of course, we pointed back out the artificial intelligence. I'm sorry, the Enrollify resource that's there. But this was a really good session as well. I mean, they're all good sessions, I think. All right. Then the last overview that we're going to go through is the AI application session. And so you'll see throughout each of the 4 installments, there's some slight examples, but this one really goes into more depth in terms of showcasing what does the application of AI look like within the enrollment management and higher education space. So we go through and we give this session really has some walkthroughs of, hey, here's what an AI chatbot looks like. Here's what hyper-personalized marketing looks like when AI is taking control of that. And you've got people on your team that are, adept in prompt engineering, or you've got a vendor that has that prompt engineering resource taken care of and is allowing you to be able to work within that to differentiate your marketing strategy from your competition. Proactive outreach as well, also the productivity side, in terms of knowledge discovery, actionable insights, how you can use AI in combination with your quantitative as well as qualitative data. We did a use case in this session of a school, Foresight Tech, in a chatbot, right, that they used, and what the outcome was in terms of replacing human dominant and exclusive support to chatbots. I want to be clear. I know chatbots have been around for a while, but we also wanted to make sure, again, this session is not just for the future forward and, you know, in terms of the things that haven't happened, but there are partners that haven't touched some of this AI knowledge in the state of Kentucky, and that's okay. So we're really speaking to a large audience. And then the live demo of AI products and their applications, as I mentioned, you're going to see that in this session through and through. And so so to go back to the slide grid, as you see here, you know, we talk a little bit about the application of ChatGPT and what, like, I really like this slide as an example, like what the human reaction is to different versions of artificial intelligence tools. Sorry. We also spent time kind of talking about the AI journey and looking over a timeline of just kind of, you know, what everything happened so that you had a sense of, you know, from concept to application. So for those who really like to have a sense of context. And then this is where you get the different examples. So conversational chatbot, you can see here, we've got the Foresight Tech KPIs here. You've got, you know, this breakdown of personality and goals, skills, knowledge, and brain, when we're talking about how to evaluate, you know, what the best application is for your school. And then again, we wrapped up really with, you know, encouraging anyone that is desirous of exploring artificial intelligence more, just to reach out to myself or to artists, whether it's through Element 451. Again, this session is not meant to promote one vendor product, but we're here to help move you in the direction that works best for you. So to wrap up on the artificial intelligence piece, and then to open the floor for any discussion. Excuse me. Let's go here. Okay. What we really want you to do in terms of the next action steps, because this is all content that we want this admissions redesign network to actively engage in as a part of that 80,000 feet vision of the admissions redesign project. So number one, share this slide deck, the Making the Sense of AI overview, with those colleagues that are not here. If this really moved you, and hopefully it did, send this as a primer, right? This slide deck is really meant to whet the palate, as I keep on saying, so that it inspires you to go into the Kentucky Impact Exchange and say, all right, let me go a little bit further. Everybody on the Admissions Redesign Network, we are highly encouraging you so that you are the most adept in your participation in this journey, this design thinking journey we are going on to help support the state and your individual planning efforts, to individually go and review the 4 slide decks that I just showed. In a moment, I will show you where they're located on the Impact Exchange, but give yourself time to expose yourself to it. And then the third piece is to watch the actual recordings, right? The recordings are going to give you the extrapolation of everything I just talked about, and will allow you to really, you know, generate questions and think about, as you're planning for your future, your next cycle, and get ready to go into that. How do we think about artificial intelligence, and how can I go back to my executive leadership, my enrollment stakeholders, and say, now is the time for us to have a conversation about artificial intelligence? And then pursue more self-guided education. We have provided very seamlessly curated information for you to build upon your knowledge within that. Self-guided course that I showed you, webinars, podcasts, the whole 9. That's for you to use. And then lastly, complete the action steps prior to July 22nd. In a moment, I'm going to talk about the design of our focus groups that are going to be happening at the end, the end of this month, as well as the end of July. But July 22nd is when the ones that are moderated, that I will be leading, will be taking place. Why do we want that before July 22nd? Because just like the Student Journey Discovery Project 1, Artificial Intelligence Discovery Project 2, right? The dual credit quantitative data, Discovery Project 3. We want all of that to inform your participation and your reflections in the focus groups. It's just going to add an additional level of rich data. And I'm really glad we made the conscious decision to move those focus groups from the original March to now July, because we got an entire cycle that we can reflect on. So for those leaders that use the summer, okay, to plan, for the next cycle, again, not only is this a part of this larger admissions redesign project, but we hope that we can send this information back to you, and then you can think about that in your individual planning for the fall, and then we'll support you in the spring. So with that, I will open the floor to see if you have any feedback, any questions regarding this, and I do hope this has been valuable to you. And in terms of getting you in a position of influence, right? We want you all to be the ones that are bringing people into this world, especially as the top influencers in this on college campuses when it comes to influencing the bottom line, which is the enrollment imperative. So thank you.
Thank you, Errol. Any questions? Feedback, thoughts?
I'll share one thought. Because of everything we understand is happening, there is not so for those who are on the call and it's like, man, I didn't make any, or I couldn't make any. It is we completely understand that this was a time where enrollment didn't look like deposits, and orientation registration didn't look like what we had hoped, and so you had to go into overdrive. This content, again, is for when you are ready. Not only is it part of the larger project that you can say to yourself, we want to participate because we want something that's going to allow us to make informed decisions for the spring yield of 2025. But it's also for you to, to be able to use and engage with as you think about your fall decision points, or when you're evaluating vendors. Okay. Another output from this is going to be recommendations of vendors at the end of this project that the state can invest in, that will help each and every one of the institutions going forward. So.
Harmony, try that link I just put in the chat. For me, it should go straight to all 4 of the AI webinar series, but sometimes based on login and whatnot, it might look different. And you don't have to log in to access information on the Impact Exchange, but I believe that when you do sign in, then you can kind of customize which channels you're a member of, which means that you'll be able to get notifications when new posts are made to that specific channel. And so our goal is that all of you have kind of signed in to the Impact Exchange and have joined the Admissions Redesign channel. And that way you can see all of this information very easily. And let's see, tinyurl.com/KY Impact Exchange, if you want that to be super easy for you. All right, great. Thank you, Errol. Errol, was there anything else you wanted to say? We're just in the last phase of the agenda now. So is there anything else about the focus groups that you want?
Yeah. I
Okay,
would love
perfect.
that would be a good transition into
Yeah.
that. So Discovery Project 4, okay, that to kind of round out our Discovery Project is going to be the focus groups. I sent out a description of the focus groups, and it's effectively the same, but we've got a couple of tweaks just in terms of timing, and then also how we're going to, in the spirit of a design thinking approach, define what the topics of conversation are going to be as we go into the focus groups. So I will share my screen. Okay. So nope. Okay. So this is the admissions student journey staff focus groups portion. I want to thank my colleague Lena for the incredible work that she did with engaging students. And that is such an important part of understanding what the student experience is, which, you know, our profession, we speak so much about, you know, centering the student in everything that we do. This portion is now recognizing the role of staff, you all, as ethnographers who have a direct first-person perspective of what the student journey looks like, not only by direct contact with students, but also indirect contact with the systems that they engage with on the back end that influence the way that they make their decisions. And so the spirit of these focus groups is really going to be to capture those that information for you to then move them into the category of actionable insights eventually. The participants are going to be the university admission staff members across the 8 public universities. Your chief enrollment officers across these 8 public universities have already submitted names of what we're calling front stage as well as backstage admissions team members. Those are front stage are the ones who work directly with students as a primary part of their role. Backstage are the ones who work primarily with the systems as a primary function of their role, because we wanted to get that balance. And that's you'll see that's going to be a theme in everything that we do. It was how we approached the artificial intelligence series with getting artists who was more on the operations side, and then me, who was working more with the human element. But we also have, as a part of this, which I'm very excited about, our college access professionals that are a part of this group. You know, like our Gear Up colleagues and otherwise that work within the high schools as well as adjacent to the high schools, and we're going to capture that feedback as well. So what we want to know as a part of this focus group is the impact of the engagement points along the college selection journey on the traditional age students' decision to enroll. From the first person perspective of staff members. I'll say that I remember when I was getting my certification in my design thinking program, and one of the projects that we had, which I thought I rolled my eyes at, we had to go and I had to take my daughter at the time, who was 1, and watch her move in the kids section of the public library. And they said, just take notes, you know, and write down all the information that you need. And I was just like, okay. And I wrote down all the information, just everything that she was doing. And after I took that data and then we went through our qualitative analysis, I realized there were things that I was seeing, but I did not have the opportunity to actually think about, you know, like in terms of real opportunities. And that's where, when we're talking about the design thinking element of this and capturing qualitative data, you have what Dr. Ledford brought, right, in terms of the quantitative piece, you know, the big data. And then you have this qualitative piece that Lena and myself are bringing, which is that thick data, the narratives. How do we look, at not only the foreground, but also the background, and then identify where our opportunity of success is. And you all are a huge part of that. So in advance, I want to thank everyone in the Admissions Redesign Network for hopping into this and being actively engaged. So there are going to be 2 parts. As you remember, we had a self-moderated and then we had a moderated. Okay. So the self-moderated session is what we're going to ask by the end of June, is for a post-mortem discussion. A lot of leaders already do this. Okay. We're just asking you to think about, to position that at the end of June. And for those who have been delegated to participate in the virtual sessions, we're asking you all to take a leadership role. And with that leadership role, facilitating in the format of a SWOT analysis, looking at this last cycle, what have been the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? This is for the leaders that are out there, for those who have been working hard and, busting their butts. This could be a real kind of release, to kind of leave everything on the table, and also a signal as you get through this deadline in early June, and then also the FAFSA completion work that's ahead. to think about that. We want to take that information and we want to be able to combine it and connect some dots with that to inform what we move forward in terms of our moderated sessions. And so we'll send information and instruction out about that. I ask our guiding team members to encourage, the completion of those as we move forward. And then we're gonna get our virtual moderated session scheduled. And it's going to happen at the end of July, the last 2 weeks of July. It'll happen with me. There will be a standard block of questions. We'll capture all of the discussion within that and then translate that into transcripts and then go forward in terms of extracting themes from each of those. The combination of the self-moderated sessions and having both the delegates participate in that and then the virtual sessions is it positions them to have 3 levels of context, right? Context level 1 is discovery projects. Context level 2 is discussion with their colleagues. And then we go into the virtual sessions, which is why they're only 30 minutes with a real targeted conversation to really get them to think about what works and what doesn't. And then we'll go forward into the sharing those results at the convening and allowing us to be able to think through that ideation session solutions that are going to make sense for that spring of 2025 for both the state of Kentucky as well as each of your individual operations. So the action steps are listed here. End of June, we want to encourage and this could be as simple as a 1-hour session, ideally in person. Get your team together, right? And say, good year, right? We're going to have that post-mortem discussion, the quadrants, which I will send out, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, go from there. I do feel I would be remiss if I did not say, okay, I know traditionally our profession in terms of the enrollment management profession has been very competitive in terms of, sharing or opening up information. But I think we're in a stage right now where we recognize with the demographic shifts, with artificial intelligence, with, what we're seeing in terms of financial aid, all these factors, sharing these ideas isn't just about, oh, there's a vendor, I'm going to get them. And then all of a sudden, my enrollment is up 100%. We're working together to be able to get everything together. So I encourage everyone to, to embrace that concept. Then scheduling your focus group sessions ASAP. I will send out a scheduling link to all of the submitted names so that you can get those on the schedule. And that will be with me. And we will get that, completed by then. And then finally planning to attend the in-person Admissions Redesign Network convening on Friday, September 13th, where we will review the final results and then go through a specific design thinking ideation session to spark creativity. The thing that I'll say about this session that you see in the blue, this will be very, very powerful because we're going to have the 8 large public universities and we're going to have our high school, college access and attainment partners all in one room, all having discussions around the emergent themes from our 4 discovery projects together. So I think that there's going to be some really powerful data that emerges. And again, we are here as facilitators of your expertise. So what we're doing with every one of these steps, while you're busy hustling, doing good work on your campuses, is we're picking all of the information out of your brains and we're representing it back to you and saying, react to it. What do you see? Just like the story I shared about my daughter at the library, watching her run up to the bookshelf and was trying to reach for the toy on the top, but she couldn't reach it and she moved on. And all of a sudden, hey, there's an opportunity to redesign that bookshelf. How can we do that with our admissions processes based off of each of these discovery project pieces of information ahead? So I'm excited to be working with this Redesign Network. And I just, again, thank you. Feel free to message me directly if you have any questions about any of this, and I will pass it to Lily. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Errol. All right, everybody. Well, just the last reminder, our next guiding team meeting is June 11th. So next week, I believe, let's see what day of the week is that. That's Tuesday. So we'll see y'all if you're on the guiding team next Tuesday at 1, and we'll be kind of talking even a little bit further about the data and getting a little bit more into if we have any follow-up data questions that we want to make sure we bring with us to our September convening. We'll have more information on the September 13th convening that is in person in Frankfurt. I believe in Frankfurt. We don't actually have a location just yet, but we will confirm that ASAP with you all. And that will be a wonderful in-person meeting. I know it'll be really, really high impact. And then we'll get all of these presentations that you have seen today, as well as this meeting recording, posted to the Impact Exchange within 1 week. So give us about 1 week to get all of that out there organized for you. And then we look forward to seeing you again soon. So I'm glad we can give you even more time back to your busy days and go and have some yummy lunch. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.